Welcome back to Spotlight. SEC Media Days right around the corner, so we are taking a closer look at the Auburn Tigers, looking for a bit of a turnaround in the 2025 season. They went 5-7 last season, 2-6 in the SEC, and missed a bowl game for the second time in the past 3 years. They got a new quarterback in town. Oklahoma transfer Jackson Arnold expected to be the starting quarterback there for Auburn. He went 5-4 as a starter in 2024, and getting a look at all of his stats in 9 starts, his completion percentage, passing yards, the passing touchdown to INT ratio, looking pretty good. If you remember, this was all with Oklahoma, by the way, but he was the number 10th overall prospect in the 2023 class, according to our partners over at 24/7 Sports. All right, speaking of 24/7 Sports, let's bring in our Auburn beat reporter for them, Nathan King, along with host of the Cover 3 podcast, Chip Patterson, to give us an Auburn preview. So in need of a bit of a change, right, gentlemen? They had their 4th straight losing season. So Nathan, I'll come to you first. Is this quarterback transfer here, Jackson Arnold, the missing piece that can kind of give them a turnaround and maybe bring them a winning season, which we haven't seen there for the Auburn Tigers in quite some time as it pertains to football?
Yeah, it's obviously what they hope. I mean, you hate to put it all on the shoulders of one position or one player, but quarterback has just been so inconsistent for them. And it's funny to look back at last season. Peyton Thorne was number 4 in the SEC in passing yardage. He had the number 5 QBR in the league. They were able to put up a lot of explosive numbers through the air, but just really, really bad when it came to plays that counted. Their third down rate was terrible. They were 6th to last in all of college football in red zone touchdown rate. And so obviously those are the parts of the game that actually get you wins. And so the Peyton Thorne experiment is now over after a couple years. Auburn hasn't had consistent quarterback play in years. And now the hope is that Jackson Arnold and that 5-star talent that you mentioned can marry with Hugh Freeze's system. Hugh Freeze talked glowingly about Jackson Arnold all throughout the spring and the type of fit that he brings to the system, a quick decision maker, obviously really good athletic ability. We saw that with his rushing totals at Oklahoma last season, and then the 5-star arm talent. You know, his last season at Oklahoma was obviously, marred with injuries, not himself, but the offensive line and the wide receiver. So the hope now is that it's a reset button for him. He's got one of the best receiving cores in the SEC at his disposal with Eric Singleton and Cam Coleman, and it's going to take a pretty solid season for him, for Auburn to get back on the winning track.
Yeah, Peyton Thorne was perfectly fine. Yeah, perfectly fine. But perfectly fine doesn't get Auburn to where Auburn wants to be, and that is competing for SEC championships. I think this wide receiver room has been far too good, and definitely this year is far too good for them to get perfectly fine kind of play at the quarterback position. And Nathan is spot on, because while having Cam Coleman, while having Malcolm Simmons, 2 outstanding freshman wide receivers allowed you to rack up the yards, the defenses just didn't respect what they had at quarterback. And so, yes, for Jackson Arnold, the versatility that he gives you, the athleticism, the ability to run maybe just a little bit more. But then I would also look at the rest of the quarterback room, which includes true freshman Deuce Knight. Now, I think they don't want necessarily to have to go all the way to the rookie here in this spot, but I just think that from top to bottom, QB1 all the way to QB3, this quarterback room has leveled up in a way that shows that Auburn is all in on not just having perfectly fine offense here in 2025.
Yeah, if you're in the SEC, perfectly fine doesn't really cut it, guys. We know that. So obviously we have, research documents in which we put together all of these graphics for all of these teams. And when we're looking through the research document and you see 5 or 6 no's in a row, it calls attention, right? So these are the team leaders from last season in passing yards, rushing yards, all the things, sacks, tackles. And Chip, none of these guys are coming back. None of them are returning. So does this give you a little bit of pause when you're looking at something like this?
Okay, no on offense, yes on defense. First, on the offensive side, we've got that youth movement that I was talking about, where you've got Cam Coleman, who's going to step into a bigger role. He was number 2 receiver last year. I expect he'll be number 1. Simmons was 3. He'll move up as well. But Eric Singleton, the fantastic, shifty, speedy wide receiver coming over from Georgia Tech, is one of the top transfer portal pickups when it comes to wide receivers in the skill positions. That's what gives them sort of an overwhelming amount of talent, where offensively, I'm not as concerned. Jarquez Hunter's a big loss. I don't want to overlook that, but just in terms of the way that I'm handicapping this Auburn offense, they've upgraded at quarterback. Their wide receivers are loaded, not as concerned. But Jacqueline, defensively, yes, because they lost a lot of production, particularly up in the front 7. You've got like a Keldrick Falk out there who's getting a lot of NFL draft buzz, but other than that, you need players to step up into new roles to be able to make sure that that defense is solid.
Yeah, Chip's exactly right. I would circle Jarquez Hunter as well, number 4 rusher in program history. Those guys don't grow on trees, but to that point, Auburn's expecting to be better all around talent-wise on offense. Yeah, Keldrick Faulk could be a first-round pick for this team next year, trying to be their best defensive lineman since Derek Brown got some Heisman buzz in 2019. But there are some other question marks, particularly in the front 7 for this defense. DeMarcus Riddick is a really good linebacker coming back from last season, a guy who has a high ceiling, former top 50 overall recruit. But other than him, there aren't necessarily much in terms of proven star power along the defensive line. Auburn went to work in the transfer portal, got a transfer from Liberty, got a transfer from Western Kentucky, got a transfer from Florida A&M. Those are your guys you're bringing in at defensive tackle. Are those names, are those schools needle movers necessarily? I'm not sure. If Auburn can find a defensive tackle, an interior presence to complement a guy like Keldrick Faulk, or find a guy like DeMarcus Riddick making a big difference at linebacker, I think that makes a really, really big difference for this team next year.
So, Nathan, you mentioned the red zone woes for the Auburn Tigers. And, of course, it always kind of comes back to people criticizing Hugh Freeze. And can he get better in critical downs and really crucial moments? Do you think that he can?
I mean, he talked all this offseason about going back, looking at the tape from last year and sort of realizing where they came up short. I will say it's not all on Hugh Freeze. Last year they were without their starting kicker, Alex McPherson, for all but one game. He was perfect on field goals the year before, so anytime you lose a guy like that, they were playing a true freshman walk-on as their field goal kicker, and he went 5 of 11 on the year. But yeah, it was just Auburn would always seem to crumble when they came down. Really, not even just the red zone. Anytime they crossed the 50, we're talking about blown leads. Double-digit fourth quarter lead against Missouri, double-digit fourth quarter lead against Oklahoma. You let those opportunities slip away, and Hugh Freeze has pointed all offseason, critical downs, critical moments in the game. There were just some occasional head-scratching decisions where, why isn't Jarquez Hunter getting more than 2 carries in the second half against Vanderbilt? Why are you calling a pass when you're up on Oklahoma with 4 minutes left that turned into a pick 6 that won the Sooners that game? I think if you cut down on those, and Hugh Freeze has recognized this, you cut down on those this season, as we've been talking about during this show, Auburn's roster talent has upgraded across the board. You feel like there were 2 or 3 wins last year they were pretty close to. Maybe you can snatch those up if you're a little bit cleaner, we'll say.
All right, it is schedule prediction time. As mentioned, 5-7 last season, 2-6 in the SEC. Missed a bowl game for the second time in the past 3 years. So, Chip, does it get better for the Auburn Tigers in your eyes?
Jacqueline, I got a big bounce back. Well, when I'm looking into this, 1-3 in one-score games a year ago, and I do think that, as Nathan was mentioning, we start to see some of those flip the other way, particularly as the SEC has you playing the exact same teams, just at different locations. I love the way this schedule unfurls for Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers. They get to break in their new additions in a lot of manageable winning environments. At Baylor is not going to be easy. I recognize that. But if they can get through it, you start to build up a little bit of confidence. You start to build a little bit of rhythm. I do have them taking losses to teams that I do think they will finish either at or below at the same spot in the standings. That would be Texas A&M. That would be Georgia. That would be the Alabama Crimson Tide. But if you look at that second column on the right, the second half of the schedule, a lot of opponents where I think that Auburn will be a favorite. So if they can do better in one-score games, if they can do better winning as a favorite, if they can, as Nathan said, just clean this up, I've got a 9-3 record. That's a 4-win improvement. But it is absent for necessarily the quality wins that would help you make the college football playoff as a 9-3 team. Missouri would probably be your best win there. So great, affirming year if they go 9-3. I've just got them falling just outside the field of the CFP.
All right. Hey, 9-3 sounds like a step in the right direction. Chip, Nathan, we certainly appreciate it as we are taking a closer look at the Auburn Tigers as, again, SEC Media Day is right around the corner. And Nathan, the entire crew over at 24/7 Sports, they do a phenomenal job at what they do, whether it's recruiting rankings, team coverage, transfer portal updates. They got you covered. We got more HQ Spotlight coming your way just ahead.